Hello, good day to Sam in office. Got today I'm gonna do watercolor palette here. This is a palette I put together, but it's just got some basic colors in it. Got wash on this side, which I probably won't use. On this side I have blue, red, orange, yellow, and brown. You'll notice how I don't have any black or white. That's because I like to mix my own blacks by mixing sometimes blue and red, a little bit of brown, or sometimes um, brown and green. Make different close to blacks that are a little bit too, because that makes your painting better sometimes. When really dark black is a bit harsh sometimes. But today I wanted to paint a this reflective lake. This is a picture my friend took the other day, and I thought it was so pretty. Um, so yeah, inspired to paint. Um, so I've got my watercolor paper. If you do have watercolors at home, I encourage you to try to follow along. If you don't have watercolors, um, you could definitely try to do this with pencils or pen or whatever you'd like. Um, but yeah, watercolors are fun. I've been really liking them. They're cheap if you go to the art store or order it online. You could get a watercolor set for just a few dollars. They're a little bit more expensive watercolors, but not too much more. I buy them in the tube, that and then I squirt the tube, and they sort of dry up. These ones are made with honey, so they don't dry up very easily. I might have poured this 3 weeks ago, but that's kind of cool. So one thing with watercolor I want to do is want to instead of grabbing the color straight from here and then putting it on your you want to mix your colors in the little palette area, this blank area. Top right. You want to grab some water and put it in here, even just clean water. Even if I just get some clean water, make a little puddle right here. See it, but I'm putting some water right here. Self little pools of water and then add color to those pools. And that way you got kind of a more controlled area to do your washes instead of getting, because if you dip right into the paint and then go on, you can definitely get too dark or the wrong color. I like to mix colors, so mixing them in here instead of mixing them in the palettes will area clean and organized. So looking at the picture I want to do, it's mostly blue, isn't it? Blue and white and maybe a little bit of green in the trees, purple. There's something I'm noticing in the clouds in the reflection towards the bottom of the picture. There's these little dots, white dots. Now, I just learned a new technique with watercolor using salt, where you drip salt into there, and it's supposed to make a texture. So I'm considering trying to use the technique. Run and grab a pinch of, and we'll try it out. I don't know how it's gonna work, but you can't try things, right? So here we go. Looking at the picture, So for watercolor, for the whites, I don't want to paint on the whites. I want to leave the white areas white. So with that in mind, looks like most of the whites are in the clouds towards the top, but not at the very top. Mostly like almost closer to the trees are the brightest white. Also in the reflection, exact same opposite. So I want to be really careful not to cover all that up. Blue wash that I'm going to start with. So blue into my water. Actually, before I put paint, I can go ahead and wet. So actually measure way mark because I want to split the picture is down the middle. Eight, no, the halfway mark. I'm gonna paint with water. Cool. That'll help. Oh, and again, I don't want to cover the whole. Okay, so I got a little bit of water on the page. I'm gonna take blue, and I can see it's a little bit darker in the reflection, and it's also a little bit darker as it goes up. So I'm gonna start at the top, try to get the shapes of the sky in there. Let the water kind of do its thing. Starting up, and you gotta kind of move fast when. Then I can just get clean water closer to the horizon. The middle, grab some. Not gonna worry about the tree. I'm gonna do that on top. Starting kind of light, and I can add more. And with this thing, I'm not doing it photo. I'm kind of using photo as about getting a similar shape up at the bottom. Noticing my. So I've got kind of a light streak in the middle that I used water, and then I gets a little bit darker as it goes up. And not being too. If I move around too much, if I scrub it, a little bit of its watercolor, you want to loose with it. Let the paint. brush and mix. What do we got now? We got some of the blue. It's definitely needs to get darker, but salt and then the tree line um, is right down the center, and it kind of is kind of up and down. And I don't want the too wet while I do that because I do want kind of defined trees. So I probably will keep the tree line till one of the last steps. As same thing with that rock. A sharp edge is where it turns from light to dark without any fade. So like the edge of the rock that's in here. This rock, it the top of it hits against the water. It goes right from pretty much black to white, light blue, real quick. So if I tried to do that now with the paper a little wet, it would bleed into the paper, uh, look messy. So what are the things that I can do with wet paper is maybe the shadows in the clouds, which I'm looking at them, and they are also kind of a blue, but a little bit more like, I don't know, greenish? A greener blue. I'm gonna grab a little bit of my green, a lot of the green. I don't want that much. That up with my blue in there. Mix that together. Yeah, that looks better. This is kind of a dark teal color. Now I'm looking at the clouds, and I'm going to try to get the shape of the shadow on the bottom of the cloud. Again, it can. So those are mainly towards the very top of the page, and then there's it's much darker at the bottom, where I'm actually seeing some purples and blue to make this darker. And bottom than I yeah, that's. Then there's even like yeah, there's a little bit of color right here, red or dark purple. Bit of that very bottom. Well, here first stage is wash it, underpaint. Now that it's really wet, I'm gonna try this salt thing. Dropping salt. That groups around. Hoping that it gets some sort of effect. What's going on? Dotted. Now again, brush. Right. What next? Hey, then maybe I did a little. I covered up the clouds a little. Okay, I might actually darken the sky now again, too. Because really, I want this middle area to dry before I do trees. So I should work on things that I can do blue, and this really dark blue top. I'm gonna be careful to disrupt. I want those bright. Now that I got that bright dark blue, of that and just fade that downward. Quickly. Where you want darker top, so then at the bottom I can do a reflection drops darker than in the sky. So maybe just keep that. Let's see. I think test, test, test. Hello, test, test, test. Okay. I realized maybe my voice was cutting out a little bit because of my noise gate, so I'm going to open that up a little bit. There we go. Sorry if my voice was cutting out. I had all before. I can't hear what I'm doing. So I just put a little bit water in the very middle, so that'll cause me to have to wait a little bit longer. That's okay. I can also take my paper towel and slightly pick up that area. The only reason I put more water there was because I want it to be a nice fade from light to dark. And I think I've gotten it. I think this is a good start to this painting. But I'm gonna have to let that sit for a minute. So while it sits, we can do a little bit of blending practice. So I'm gonna set that aside, and I'm going to grab a piece of paper. Let me cut a smaller thing off of this. Just a strip. Cut, 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 cut. So here's a fun, if you have some watercolors, it's just a fun exercise to get yourself familiar with the way it works. Is try to get a smooth blend from one color to the next. So in this case, I want to do, since I have blue, I'll do blue on one side, and I'll do, how about yellow on the other side? So it should be green in the middle. So first I'm gonna get maybe a little bit more paint, nice and dark here on this side, and then I'll take clean water and I'll just drag that towards the middle, like that. Too much touching and it will spoil the effect. You can pick some up if you did too much. Now I'm going to grab the yellow, put it over here, and do the same on this side. So bright yellow right here, and then grab some clean water and drag it from the yellow over. Now you can see it's going from yellow to blue, but it still doesn't have too much of a clean transition, so I'm going to add water right in the middle to hopefully they can blend together. I think I might need more yellow pigment on this side. So I'm going to increase my yellow load and then increase my blue load a little bit and kind of grab clean water, put it in the middle. Yeah, something like that. So now I've got yellow kind of going down into green and then into blue. It's not a perfect transition. I'm still learning how to get that right, but that's the idea. Right? So yeah, you can practice this, not even doing arts, but this will make a pretty bookmark. Maybe I'll add some salt in here too, just to add some texture, and because I'm experimenting with it. So I'll add a little bit of salt on there. This will make a nice bookmark for me, which I do need because I lost my bookmark. Having a kid, they like to take bookmarks out. Alright, there's a little bit of water on my desk here. Wipe that up. Alright, get my scissors out of my way. Let's see how we're doing here. Feeling it? It feels pretty much dry in the middle. There's little bits of, it's wet towards the bottom. That's okay, I can let that go. But for now, I want to try to get the trees. So I've been using this, let's see, this flat brush, and a flat brush just means it's flat across the top, not to a point. I have this huge brush here that's more of a rounded shape that I use when I do bigger washes sometimes. And then I have this brush. This is probably my favorite one, which is a oval brush, and it's comes to a point. So I'm going to use this one now for those trees because I need that sharp point in order to make the trees look pointy. So I do know that trees are green, but in this picture they're looking more green towards the right, but at the left is like almost purple. So kind of like we did with this bookmark I just did. I'm gonna kind of make a dark green, let's see, on one side. So I can always darken it later, so it doesn't need to be super dark, but something like that. And then on this side, I'm gonna try to do, let me soak up that, like more of a purpley, even darker color. So I've got blue, and purple is blue and red, so I take a little bit of red, mix that in there. Cool, now I've got a really deep purple and a semi-deep green here. Maybe a little bit more. This specific green I'm using is called sap green, which is a little bit foresty and nice. So, with that in mind, find my middle point again. Pretty much just right in the middle of this line. I'm going to even make a little mark. And then, let's get this over so you can see. I made a little mark on this side. And I'm going to make a little mark on this side too, just so I can keep myself in track. And now I'm going to kind of start with the green side, and I can see there's a little white line between them. So I want to be cognizant of that. But starting with the green side, I'm going to draw a line. Actually, I'll start from the middle and draw a line all the way across. And then do the same thing, but leave a space in the middle if possible. Like that. Now I'm going to pick up the other color and do the same thing and connect them. You know, I probably should have actually used the flat brush for this, but that's okay. So now that those are connected, I can start to do those tree shapes. So I'll start with the reflection first, just in case it is a little bit wet. I can, it's okay if it's a little bit blurry in the reflection. I'm actually going to turn this upside down and just kind of do this shape like this. up and down really quick, just to give me a nice tree shape. And then remember, it's green on this side. So I'll pick up the green, do the same thing, just up and down, kind of quickly, because I do want to get to the other side before it dries. And then switch to purple around the middle, and keep it going. All the way across. Now flip it over. Oops, got orange on my finger. Gotta be careful sometimes if I accidentally pick up a color on my fingers, which you can see, and I touch the paper in the wrong spot, then I could get orange on my fingers. Orange on my painting where I don't want them. So now I'm going to do the same thing along the top. And I can see that my paint's already drying, so I want to be working a little bit quick. And it's a mirror image from the bottom, so trying to match the general height. I'll grab the purple. So where it gets shorter, maybe I should get a little shorter. There we go. Something like that. Oh, I realize you can't see everything I'm seeing here. Just wash my fingers off real quick. Oh my gosh. Getting this orange everywhere. Cadmium orange is a bright, bright color, as you can see on my fingers. I'm gonna just rinse it off in my water. Wow. Yeah, some of these pigments are more expensive than others because of their brightness and how much pigment is used in them. And I don't want to wipe it on my pants, because that will stain. Alright. Looking decent here. I do like that texture. It's a subtle texture that the salt added, but I like it. There's little darker spots are where it's still wet and the salt's still sitting there. But so far, so good. I can see that my trees are not nearly as dark as they need to be still. So I'm gonna make a darker purple by adding more red and more blue. And even maybe a little bit of green in there to gray it out a little bit. So this is a really dark pigment I have now. Maybe even a little bit more blue and green. Oh yeah, this is getting real dark. And then I'll make a really dark green on the other side. Let's see. Just like that. Yeah. And so with this, I'm going to just do the same thing I just did. A little bit more careful to get those tree shapes. I can kind of swipe up, little tiny swipes to get the trees. But since I have that lighter color behind, I can leave little spaces and it'll look good. Go ahead and just go to the bottom too. Leaving little space. Because the more different shades of green you have in your trees, the more kind of complex and more depth that will be created. Now I'm switching to my purple side and doing the same. If you have a brush like this, you can kind of slightly rotate it as you go to get a little bit different shapes. Because in nature, nothing's really uniform or the same. There's always little variations. And that's what makes the natural world so beautiful sometimes, is that every tree is different. Every cloud is different. That's cool. Now I'm gonna actually overlap some of the purple into the green so that's a little bit cleaner of a fade from purple to green. I only want that greenest green on the very far right, just like the picture. Just clean that up a little bit. Maybe make the trees a little taller towards the edge. Just so we get kind of a, like it's skinnier in the middle and wider towards the edge. It kind of looks like that in the pictures. So with that in mind, I'm going to heighten up the sides. And then reinforce that line through on the bottom while it's still wet. Just connecting all the trees together. There we go. That's looking pretty good. Nice contrast. Just gonna feel the paper here. I think it still might be a little bit too wet right here for my rock, so I'm gonna wait on that a little bit. But I can start to look at other areas of my painting now and see if I need to add or subtract anything. Since this is still wet down here, I'm gonna go ahead and dab with my paper towel a little bit, just to pick up some of that moisture and those little bits of salt that are still hanging on. I don't want to get that orange that I wiped off. All right, very cool. Let's see, this light is very bright. It doesn't look this light in real life, but looking pretty decent. Okay, so what I want to do, I've gotten this middle part so dark, and looking at the picture and squinting my eyes, if I look at that dark line in the middle, is there anything else that's just as dark? I think the shadows on the bottom of the on the clouds on the reflection are also pretty dark like that. So I'm gonna actually darken those up a little bit more with a blue color that I'm gonna let kind of mix with this green a little bit. And I'm going to go ahead and throw that in there. A little bit, let's see. Just darkening it all up. Because with watercolors, you kind of work from light to dark a lot of the time. Sometimes I actually go dark colors right off the bat, but it's a little bit safer maybe to do light colors first and just slowly work them until they get dark as you want them. I'm going to do a little bit of the shadow again upstairs. Maybe like that. And if there's any lines that seem too sharp, I can always take some water and brush them along the outside of them like that. Car alarm outside. Yeah, brush them along the outside, and that'll soften the edges a little bit. And you got to do this while it's still wet. All right, looking pretty good. Maybe a little bit of the shadows in there. Now I do have gouache, something called gouache on my palette, which I might use at the end to get some of my light, bright whites back in or around these clouds. Gouache is basically just watercolor, but it's opaque, which means it's not see-through, so you can paint it on top of what, like, so I could paint white on top of a dark color and it'll still work. It won't be as bright as the paper, but it will be nice and bright. It'll be nice and you can get a little bit of the light back. So looking at my painting, I think I maybe went a little bit too, I emphasized the white area a little bit too much. I want to make that, I want to drag the blue a little bit further towards the trees. And I gotta be careful because I know the trees are probably still a little wet. So I'm gonna do this on the bottom first, but I'll take this blue and just get a little bit closer to the trees. Even doing a little bit of the same scrubbing motion as I did for the trees to get as close as I can, with trying not to touch too much. But on the reflection, it's okay if it touches a little bit. In fact, a little bit of blurring is nice in a reflection. So let's do that. You can see a slight blur in the reflection, especially on the left side, but all the way across really. So I'm gonna let that kind of sit. Maybe I can pick it up a little bit so it doesn't go too wild. Pick it up, I just mean with the paper towel. All right, oh yeah, that's looking pretty good. And I do want to do the same thing to the top, but I'm gonna wait because I don't want it to blur. So I need this green tree line to be nice and dry before I do that. I'm just looking down at my painting, then up at it. So one thing that might be nice is maybe some, like, I don't know, some birds flying or something. You can think about doing little bird shapes, which would just be little black, like the letter V, kind of. But I don't know, maybe I shouldn't. I think I'm gonna abstain actually. My cleaning water, let me see if I can show you, it's getting pretty dirty. So generally I like to change out the water maybe after every 2 or 3 colors so that my water doesn't change the color. I could already tell, like, it dirtied up this blue that I tried to put in there a little bit because the water was so dirty. And that's okay, it's not a big deal. But yeah. Okay, let's see, what else could I add? Maybe I can deepen the sky blue just a hair towards the top by adding blue, water. So a little bit of darker blue towards the top of the page, maybe even towards the bottom too. And then get a little bit of water to fade that into the blue I already have. Yeah, that should be nice. Something like that. Well, that's looking pretty good. I can take that, and now I think the trees should be dry enough. I'll try not to touch them. I'll get really close. There we go. And what I'm doing there is just to make it so it's not super white next to the trees. And it's all the way dry, it shouldn't bleed too much. Gouache, on the other hand, I've learned will bleed. And I'm seeing that this line in the middle actually isn't white. I'm gonna go ahead and just put this dirty water right over it just to darken it up a little bit because it's looking a little bit too bright for me. There we go. Looking good. What I do want to do before we end here for the last 10 minutes is put in that rock. So it's looking close to black, but there's some gray in it, and in order to get gray I might mix some red in with this green I already have. I like to, if possible, use the colors on my palette and mix new colors out of them instead of drying them up every time and having to redo it. And since it's a rock, I'm actually going to switch to my flat brush again, because rocks have kind of more jagged, flat edges a lot of the time. And if I had a smaller flat brush, I would use that, but I'm stuck with this big one. So it looks like I have kind of a dark diamond shape going on. So I don't want to do it too big. It's about right there. Something like that.
Daddy,
Hi, Olive.
I need to go potty.
Okay. I could help you. Go ahead. Okay.
But are you done?
I'm not finished, but I can come help you when you need me. Okay.
Okay. And then I go potty.
Okay. My baby's sleeping, and Olive needs to go potty, so I may need to help her out in a second. Just takes me a minute. All right. So I made this diamond, and now I'm trying to make it darker towards me because that's where the shadow is. By just adding this purple in there. Like that. Yeah. Coming. Alright, I gotta help Olive real quick. I said I'm almost done. Just 10 more minutes, okay? Okay. So I think all I really need now is like a real dark color for the reflection of this rock, as close to black as I can get. So I'm gonna do that by mixing a lot of green, a lot of red. See where we get. Okay, that's getting close. Now maybe a little bit of blue in there just to cool it down. Now that is close to black. So that's exactly what I want, and I want to paint that just the reflection of the rock in this darker color. So the bottom. And then maybe a little bit going up, but not quite as dark. Oh, shoot. Too much water. Too much water. Alert, alert. Actually, it looks kind of cool, but I'm going to sop up some of that. There we go. Sometimes I do that. I get more water than I think on my tip of my brush, and then when I set it down, it just pools out. Taking the same black, I'm going to darken up just the bottoms of the tree areas. Yeah, just because it's denser towards the bottom, where they all overlap, than it is at the top where you see the tops of the trees. So just lightly do a little S shape along the bottom edge. And I'll let it lighten up as it goes to the right to sort of emphasize what I've got going on. Okay, looking pretty good. I think maybe I lost a little bit of definition because of my wash at the bottom, so I'm going to just go ahead and do more kind of more defined flicks to get those trees back in a little bit. Just because it got a little bit messy down here. don't be afraid to use your finger if you need a quick smudge. Um, I end up using my finger quite a bit while doing painting, any kind of painting. Cool. I think that's looking pretty good. Now, like I said before, I'm gonna try. Actually, let me get fresh water real quick. Give me 1 second. I'm painting with the students. Okay. Sorry, I had to clean my water a little bit, and I don't need much water. But I'm gonna try to get a little bit of those whites back in. Um, this is looking a little bright because of my light here. So if you can tell, I think I lost a little bit of the clouds because I went over them a little bit too much. So I'm gonna take white gouache, which again is opaque watercolor, and I've got some in my palette here. And I'm going to try to maybe add some little white areas in. And I know that this will dry darker than what I'm seeing too, but that's okay. It's kind of doing this white layer it's a little bit of a last resort. Ideally, I would have left the whites of the paper, but that's okay. You can't get it right every time. So I'm just gonna do like the rims of these clouds, the outside of the clouds. I want to add the white in that I lost. And this should kind of tie it all together. And same within the sky, there's definitely some whites I lost around the edges of these clouds. And also little tiny clouds in the sky that I kind of let go a little bit accidentally. And that's okay. Because that's where gouache really comes in handy, is these little saviors. But also, people do whole paintings with gouache too. It's a little bit more like acrylic, in that you can just paint over things and it's not so see-through. Especially if you use it straight out of the tube, it's not very see-through at all. It's opaque. The opposite of transparent or see-through is opaque. So gouache is just opaque watercolor. And you can find it at most art stores. I know Ellis is where I got a couple of my gouaches. Actually, I think I got all of them from Ellis, which is downtown Chico. I like to shop there, even though it's a little bit expensive sometimes. I'm just adding whites here and there all around, letting my brush kind of break a little bit now so that I get some more expressive. But hey, I think that this is not too bad for a first try of a reflection. Yeah, and I think with the hour being up, actually I got 10 minutes left on an hour. I started at 10:30, but I was a little bit late. Oops. So I'll do a little bit more in here. I want to maybe even, let's see, I was gonna say darken up the darks even more. Maybe I'll use a little bit of this black gouache just to get my rock shadow a little darker and more precise. And then also some of these tree bottoms, again, just a little bit darker, ever moving towards darkness. I read a quote from, I don't remember what artist, but he said that painting is trying to capture light with the tools of darkness. And what he means is that we're trying to paint the effects of light, and everything we see is lit by the sun or by a lamp or whatever. But the tools we're using, paint, only makes the paper darker. So we're trying to paint light with the tools of darkness. I just think that's a cool way to think about it. So that's how I like to think about it. Is I'm always making the paper darker, but I'm always thinking about what kind of light effect is going on. Yeah, especially with watercolor, you have to think about your brightest areas and how to keep them bright. Or else you'll have to kind of fudge it with gouache like I did. All right, looking pretty good. Maybe a little bit of, yeah.
Can you help me open this and put this on me? I mean, can you help me find that little princess crown you got me?
The princess crown?
Yeah.
Yeah. Can you give me just 2 more minutes to finish this up?
Sure.
How's it look?
Great.
Looks great, thank you.
Why are you painting?
What does it look like?
It doesn't. I don't know what it looks like.
It's like a lake, and there's clouds above it, and it's reflecting off of the lake. That kind of cool?
Yeah.
Pretty cool, huh? Cool. And I think actually I'm going to leave it at that. I think this turned out pretty decent. A reflection of the lake, and still a little bit wet, but yeah. I hope you learned a little bit about watercolor. If you have them at home, it's a pretty common thing in art kits or anything, so I wouldn't be surprised if you had some. Go ahead and bust them out and try some watercolor out. Pick a picture you like. Maybe use this picture. I'll make it big so you can pause it if you want to pause it here and do it on your own. So yeah. Have a good rest of the
When you're done
of the day.
talking, then can you find out